So hello, everybody. Um, Dave Beardsley here. You already heard my introduction. I'm with a company called ATCS. We're about 250 people, mostly in the Mid-Atlantic region, and I'm the traffic discipline lead, but excited here to facilitate a discussion for us about, team building for performance, high performance teams. There's been lots of discussions over years in business about what makes a high performance team tick, how to build them. What I thought it'd be very interesting if we could just collaborate to share, what we're doing in our companies and organizations in order to establish these teams, keep these teams together. So that's kind of the topic area here. So I thought maybe we just kind of start warming everybody up by talking about what we kind of think a high performance team really is, what kind of qualities that they might have that would differentiate them from other groups.
So David, before you jump in, I guess I was scribing the first session. Would you like me to continue that, or does somebody else want to step up and start from here?
Joseph, thanks for that reminder. So getting bumped into the second room, I forgot to ask. So we do need a scribe. If someone would help Joseph out and do it for him for this next group, unless you're good to do it again, Joseph. Any volunteers? Take the pressure off of Joseph. All right, Joseph, you're on the hook. I'm taking notes too, so I'll help. So don't worry.
I hate to deprive somebody of that opportunity.
I know. I'll help too, so don't worry about it. That's my job. So thank you for asking. All right, so what is it? What do we think a high performance team? What kind of qualities distinguish them from other, other groups in your eyes?
I'm thinking more on the, just like our keynote speaker said, multitasking, being nimble, going between projects, kind of diversifying their skill set as well. I think that lends itself to a high performance team.
All right. Diversifying skill set. One of the things I've been reading about a lot lately with high performance teams is building trust within a team. So I would offer, that out for discussion. And how do you build trust between teams? One of the things that we've started doing just this past year in my company is to do debriefs in whether we win projects, lose projects, pursuits, midway through a project, we're doing debriefs so that we're, the whole project team would get together and kind of talk about how we think we're doing, where we've maybe made mistakes, how we can improve as we go through, and we all kind of offer our own, self-criticisms in front of the group. And we have found that has been really helpful to just establishing this, this vulnerability with the group that you work with. So trust, I think, is important.
Yeah, I think Nasser and David, you both brought some very good points. One more I would throw something lately that I know there is a lot of emphasis at our firm is in getting more lining up with your community. When I say community, it's not just doing the community service, but there is a lot of recognition that you really need to be seen in your local chamber of commerce. You really need to be seen with activities that is happening that may or may not be the transportation industry, but things that are happening local level. You need to be seen of having relationship with clients at different levels. So that basically community attachment has been a big focus that I've been hearing lately. Another element of high performance.
Yeah, thanks for offering that. My company actually has 4 pillars, and one of them is community. And what I feel like that is, and we look to get involved with our communities. But what I feel like that does 2 things. It helps team building because we get out of the work environment if we're doing something together, and establishing relationships with people. But it also gives people sort of a common vision of like of things that they may, be striving for. So if you just organize an event to build a house, house building, or clean the park, those really help bring a team together too. So I agree.
Hey, David, I think this is a good discussion. A couple other things that we actually look at as a company at Structure Point, but I think it's kind of like also an important aspect is looking at responsiveness. I think a high-performing team needs to be very responsive. I think you cannot miss on things. I think that is really going to help you, whether you're working in the core internal environment or whether you're working externally with other clients or other teams or other consultants. And then the other component that goes with that, and I think Brandy covered this, you have to be a great communicator. Communication, I think it goes without saying. So I think that's another component. And then the third item would be like being proactive. I think a high-performing team is always looking for what's next and how can you get there, and maybe coming up with strategies on how to get there. And I think if you can really cultivate that, that can certainly help not only with the internal team building, but as you're kind of like looking on projects or opportunities, and I think that kind of like goes back to, again, bringing it back to IT as an organization. I mean, we have been spread across in so many different areas, disciplines, and then having that collaborative approach together. So I think those are maybe three other things I would add. I completely agree that the trust building is like one of the most important ones because you need to be each other's eyes and ears. So.
Yep, it's a team, right? So it's all about the team. Great, good, great points. So, what are our companies, organizations doing? If you've built high performing teams, what are we all doing in this crazy job market and environment to keep our high performing teams together? Keep sustain our staff. Anything interesting that you guys are focused on from that standpoint?
Yeah, I can actually go ahead and get started just to hit a couple points. I think we hit this in the staffing discussion as well, and I think it kind of like goes hand in hand. I think it's really important to keep those high performers excited about the next big thing for them, and I think there are a few ways we can do that. Is making sure that we are having the career pathing discussions with them to make sure that they understand the passion that they are showing for what they do and for the industry is actually going to not go in vain. It's going to actually help them kind of like be the next leader in doing whatever they are doing. So yeah. I really think that falls into play. And then obviously mentoring, depending on the level of experience, but you may have energetic younger folks who are really excited to do the next big thing. And I think it's great. I mean, you should never let them shy away from achieving those goals or dreams, as long as you can really walk the walk with them and help them kind of like understand how they can get where they want to be. So that can, if we do those few things, I think that can help with retaining the talent as well, whether it's on an industry-wide basis or whether it's kind of like on an organization basis. So.
Yeah, thanks, Hardik. That it just makes me think of two things that my company's doing. One, I think is pretty interesting. So one, we started 2 years ago. It's a mentoring program. It's really for anybody at any level in our company. I'm a mentor. I'm also a mentee to our CEO. So it helps us kind of engage on many levels. It's, brings in different element. Something else we started this past year is an early career coaching program. Not quite a mentoring thing, but it's our real A players that we've hired within the last year or two. And we recognize that they'll want growth opportunities. We have a playbook and we have a coach, and the coach engages with that person and kind of goes through playbook to help them kind of look forward in their career and where they want to go. So that's been a pretty cool thing that our company has been doing. So Anybody else doing anything interesting in terms of, retaining employees, collaborating, and contributing to a high performance team? That's okay if not. I got a couple other things for us to kind of think about high performing teams. There's barriers. What are the biggest barriers that we are seeing in industry about, achieving that high performing team, and what you're doing about those barriers? So barriers to high performance teams is the topic.
I think, if I may add, from a client perspective, I think, or owner perspective, they're having the same challenges as we are. And I think that may put a damper on our high performance team. In other words, our PM is trying to, manage a complex project. However, on the client side or owner side, they have a younger, less experienced PM. And that puts a little damper on our initiatives, and it's quite challenging as well. But I think that dampens, performance when you have a leader on the other side with less experience.
Yeah. What do we think the virtual environment that we've been living in for the last year has been helping or hurting? I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, I've myself seen that I probably collaborate across my company better now with teams, but it's less face-to-face. So what are y'all doing in terms of the virtual environment? Do you see it as a barrier?
Yeah, I think there are some barriers. I think, as you said, David, that it can be good, and it does pose some challenges. As I mentioned to the other folks who were in the group earlier, that our firm has been a work from home business, prior to the pandemic. So we've been doing it for a long time, and we do experience some challenges in terms of from the team perspective. But one of the things we try to do is ensure that we're regularly available. The leaders are regularly available to staff, on sort of as required basis. That's sort of your first priority to get back to. Maybe even sometimes more than clients, but because they are your internal clients, you have to keep them going along, because if they're waiting for an answer from you, then it's a lot more difficult in the virtual environment to sort of sit and wait, because you can just get up from your desk and go over to somebody else's desk if you're not getting an answer. So that's probably one of the challenges. A little more difficult to sort of get an on the go or an informal sense as to how people are doing, that you can kind of pick up sometimes from, just, sharing space, seeing somebody come in the door in the morning, meeting up with them in the lunchroom. So you kind of lose touch on that a little bit. So
yeah,
it requires more deliberate communication, but I think, as you said, it can be more effective because you are being very deliberate about it.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Gene. So,
And David, I'll
go ahead.
just add one more thing. I think Jane captured it pretty well. There is pros and cons with the virtual environment, and I agree that maybe the team building, if you are more of a national presence or maybe a regional presence, I think that has definitely gotten much better. But if you look at more from a client interaction perspective, sometimes I think you collaborate well with the client if you have that face-to-face, one-on-one meeting. So I think there are hurdles going through that, but overall, I think the good thing is, because it's not just one entity getting into this on their own. I think this is a global thing, and I think everyone is adapting, navigating through that. So you do have some challenges going through that, but even if you look at it from a client perspective, I think they are experiencing similar situations. Everyone is trying to learn something new every day, and I think as long as you can kind of like really work things together in terms of making sure that you understand their limitations or boundaries, then I think it can really work out. And it goes back to maybe communication again. I think one other component, maybe on the hurdle side for the high performers, I would certainly say that there have been times when you do feel like people want to really get ahead of where the overall situation needs to be. And I think that's a good thing if you have someone who is really very aggressive, but I think trying to kind of like really help them understand why the pace needs to be what it needs to be. And I think that can actually be a deterrent at times as well, because then they might think that, well, I'm not being able to really go at 200 miles and I'm being slowed down. Then I think that can be a hindrance. And I think it really depends on how, as managers and leaders, you can really help them understand the whys behind it as well. Then I think that can go a long ways. So
yeah.
I'd add to that too. I think, Hardeep, that I think, and I don't necessarily want to try to draw distinctions between sort of generations or other nature, but I find some of our more recent graduates are very anxious to move ahead and don't sort of stop to enjoy the journey a little bit. Like they've got this checklist of accomplishments that I need to be a project manager in 5 years, and I need to be a project director in 15. And it's like, oh, just enjoy the journey as it goes along. And it's good to have a direction. I would never discourage someone from having a direction, but sometimes it's just good to enjoy how it goes along, and let progress will take its way if you're doing a good job and you have a bit of a direction. So I always try to encourage our more junior folks that look, don't just want to get that check mark so that you can kind of say you've accomplished that, like that's part of being a high performing team. So we're sort of view it more as a continuum. So as opposed to having, we don't want to necessarily create all these different sort of job positions within the organization, but sort of recognize that as you reach certain milestones, like your professional license, and after a certain degree of time, that you can take on more responsibility and think of it more as a continuum. And I think that helps from the team environment, in that people don't feel that they have to have a title to be able to do something. That if you're gaining experience, you have that opportunity. And I think that's incumbent upon us, sort of more in the leadership levels, to sort of carve those opportunities out for people. And that certainly helps to, I think it helps from a team perspective, because then people can kind of interrelate a little bit better. They're doing some similar tasks across jobs. So especially in smaller firms where you don't really have that opportunity to have all these different levels of sort of position categories within your organizational structure.
Yeah, that's a common problem we definitely face in our company a lot. So, I mean, what are we all doing aside from the things that Gene just kind of talked about, to give our younger people a more direction, more understanding of how they fit into it. So one of the things that we've been doing about, kind of checking in on our progress and debriefing with ourselves is, we have found that as we sit in a group and talk about what we could have, each of us maybe could have done better, they can self-recognize their own areas for improvement. So, not everybody, no one's perfect. That's our story. And the more we can kind of help each other get better and better. We've kind of helped our younger people, I think, just realize, well, you know what, you maybe have done that analysis exactly right, but you kind of lost the bigger picture. So let's talk more about the bigger picture and kind of coach them like that. So coaching has been a big thing for us. Are the other firms or the other guys doing anything similar with your young people? Or programs that the companies might have that do something similar?
A couple things. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to I was just going to chime in that, yeah, what we just discussed, the mentor mentee, we have done that, and really trying to, instead of having a really seasoned or senior person, in addition to that, having kind of the mid-level, that way they can kind of relate. Quite frankly, some of our senior folks don't want to go to happy hour, don't want to go to lunch, or whatever. But the junior level folks that are somewhat more senior than the entry level do. So I think that's a success. Trying to team up pairs that can relate inside and outside the office. That work-life balance that we always hear about is important, and a lot of the good mentoring and coaching in our firm occurs outside the office. I've noticed.
Great.
I was just going to add, there's a couple things that we've done, sort of building on Nasser's comment about the, sort of next level up. One of the things that we do is if there's, say, for example, there's an industry event where we're, that is organized by, say, a university, a local university or something like that. We tend to send our more junior folks to that as opposed to the more senior people, because they can relate a lot better to the students because they're more recent graduates. And we will usually supplement that with maybe one senior person, but we tend to ask our more junior folks to take that on. It gives them a sense of sort of ownership, in the sense that we're asking them to represent the company and and do and be our face. And that's one thing. The other thing that we just did recently, and sort of works well for a smaller company, but we just decided to purchase LinkedIn Learning for all of our staff. AXA are licensed to LinkedIn Learning, and basically said, use it as much as you want. You have certain parameters about how much you can use it for office work, but within billable hours. But use it anytime you want outside of the office. You can encourage you to, and then we're sort of linking that back to their professional development programs in terms of being able to say, here are some things to look at that you might want to, some courses you might want to look at through LinkedIn Learning, but feel free to explore anything you want. And, it's an opportunity for a relatively low amount of money to give them access to a pretty big library of learning opportunities.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I definitely took a note. I think that would be something fun for us to do at ATCS as well. We're getting a little.
Hey, David,
Go ahead.
I think there were a couple other things I was going to add. I think this is a good conversation. So what we have actually done at Structure Point, we do have, and I'm sure this is probably different organizations or agencies call it differently, but we have what we call it is a point up committee, which basically looks at anything, emerging issues or topics or things that might be kind of like relevant to our industry. And then trying to kind of like bring executives and management level people to be able to really interact and have conversations with staff, especially when you have offices in multiple different regions or locations. I think that really serves better, because then you can get that one-on-one interaction with an executive level. And I think that can help those high performers, because now they know that they are able to really have the opportunity to engage and talk to the executive level people as well, and understand about how they ended up being where they ended up being. And then the other thing is peer-to-peer interaction, because I think someone, maybe either Nasir or Gene, did mention that it's the younger, maybe the generation gap. Let's not call young and old, but I think it's making sure that sometimes people who are kind of like
hey Hardik, we're going to get booted out of here in just 1 second. So